Ron?
Yeah.
That's what.
Every few minutes. And also the said like had to get this was Sunday, so I was usually on big also. It's just the it's actually like the short up. It's just third so back Friday. To provide your email. I do yesterday night. Five weeks ago, going back to school after my back to so this was. So I'm on to it. We talked to each other out of our tour. Yeah. I think it's hard. She said she'll come back after.
So.
And then my husband looked at us. Letting this get right. I said, but I said, so I said, so we did this like tax week thing. So I was probably said, the doctor's there. She's and I said, she's got to go back. We can't just keep it. We have to do so. No, he's going to say, yeah, right. Yeah. They say it's listening. I mean, I'll miss things about this, but I don't think I'll get all this things. So, everything all this. But she must start at super. And then it's fine. Rest of it. It's all like, oh my gosh, I really want to hear that right. Is it across the road today? But it's all just sitting on. You're doing something wildly different. Right. So, but I thought with that, and I asked her, but she was wrong. She didn't think it was. And then I had this journal last night, sent me this. I mean, I guess, you know, that he had a medical situation, but the way he was.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and dive in. Go ahead and get started with the roll call. Laura?
Okay, so I know that there are some people that can't make it today. I'm gonna say your name anyway, just so we can keep moving accurately through the roll. Let's start with Alan. Bellum. Virgil. Boyd. Brock. I got you. Virgil, is that the better, Virgil?
Yes.
Sorry. Brock. Brian.
Here.
Buzan.
Here.
Chen.
Here.
Holly.
Here.
Council.
Here.
Dyer.
Here.
Elias.
Here.
Ellison.
Here.
Elman.
Here.
Fawcett. Was it proxy?
Sorry.
Okay. Fleming.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Hart.
Here.
Hildebrandt.
Here.
Hopper.
Here.
Ivory.
Here.
Danson. Kazim.
Here.
Khan. Kimbrell.
Here.
Kozaks.
Here.
Maggiano.
Here.
Matthews.
Present.
Mendes. Moon.
Here.
Ofoe.
Here.
Peralta.
Here.
Riker.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Ruffin.
Here.
Schoon.
Here.
Song.
Here.
Shelnutt.
Here.
Siciliano.
Here.
Swift.
Here.
Talbot. Biswanath.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
Wentz. Yang.
Here.
Yarborough.
Here.
Yay.
Here.
Zot.
Here.
Okay, that's great. And just a heads up for all of you, I hope to have the minutes turned around over the weekend. So expect them in your inbox on Monday, and if we can approve them by Wednesday, that would be awesome, and then we can move the curriculum forward. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you all again for being here. So the president of the provost let us know a couple days ago that they have some commitments off campus. They won't be able to be with us today. I know it's, that happens from time to time, so I appreciate y'all being here anyways. A couple things on that front. So I'm starting to hear from some colleagues that, especially with regard to the president, it's been here a while. We're starting to get our own impressions, and maybe that's affecting our inclination to continue to give feedback, continue to talk, continue to engage. And I just really want to encourage everyone to always engage. Always, always, always. Your voice matters, and your voice can only make a difference if you contribute that voice. The only way that we guarantee that we don't have an influence is if we don't try to influence. So let's continue to do that. So to that end, I just continue to encourage y'all when they're here, please participate in that discussion, and at any time before, whether it's before a meeting or at any time, can send me information that you want to get passed along. My understanding is at this time, they're both planning to be with us in executive committee a week from today. So anything that you would like us to bring up and discuss there, that's a good forum to have some in-depth conversations on some things. And my understanding also is that they're going to be with us at our December meeting as normal. So that's that. What I do want to do before we move on to the rest of the agenda, just in the context of updates. So yesterday, I spent the day in Atlanta at the USG Faculty Council meetings, and we meet. So first off, if you have no idea what that is, I didn't until I started getting emails from them saying you remember. The USG Faculty Council is basically comprised of the Senate chairs, or whatever they call the equivalent of the Senate chair at all of the 26, soon to be 25 USG institutions. And we meet regularly virtually, usually about once a month, sometimes as needed. But we meet in person twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. And to be honest with you, I mean, some of you in the room have been there before. Yeah, I know Jason's gone before. There's varying levels of productivity, I think, in fairness, that comes from those meetings. Sometimes they're more productive, sometimes they're not. So I've kind of shared as needed with the appropriate venues when information comes up. But yesterday's meeting was a rock star. Yesterday's meeting was really good. So I just want to go ahead and share some things that I learned there that I think would all like to know about. Just in principle, it's a good venue to just see what we're dealing with. And one of the first things that was immediately clear is the challenges we face here, for the most part, really aren't unique around the system. A lot of our counterparts across the system are dealing with some really similar things. So for example, we know that our enrollment is up, and that is awesome. But we also know that maybe it's not up in the ways that we need it to be up. Maybe if you dig into the details, there's some reasons to have some questions about some things. Those are the exact conversations that are happening around all over the state. So enrollment is up at most USG institutions, but some institutions are saying, all right, maybe it would be nice if we had some more in-person students than we do. Maybe it'd be nice if we weren't having to rely so heavily on graduate students. Maybe it'd be nice if we're filling our buildings a little bit more. The same conversations that we're having around here, they're having all across the state. It tends to be, the USG is set up in a hierarchy. We have the research institutions at the top. We're in the comprehensive sector, which includes us, Kennesaw, Southern, and Valdosta. And below that, you have state colleges and the state universities. In general, the more you move down that hierarchy, it seems more that there are problems with this balance of, okay, maybe we have students, but maybe we're not filling rooms like we need to be, things like that. Just want to share that. Some other common issues that we deal with. I'm going to talk more about salary in a minute. We know that salary is a concern for us in a really big way. It's not just a concern for us. It's a very widespread issue. It's a serious issue, and it's on the chancellor's radar screen. Overwork, we're all more students for your faculty. That's our issue. That's a widespread issue. It's also on the chancellor's radar screen. And this idea of like maybe there's a mission creep thing at certain institutions. Maybe we're being pushed a little bit more to do research that we've done in the past, things along those lines. Those are kind of common issues that some of our, especially in the comprehensive sector, especially in comprehensives that have relatively new presidents. So Kennesaw and Southern in the past few years, the dialogue about, hey, let's up our research productivity is something that is a familiar one. Also get a lot of questions. I know we have a lot of questions about the new accreditor on the block, the Coalition for Public Higher Education that was announced in a very political way over the summer. So the initial press conference when the CPHE was rolled out was conducted by Ron DeSantis down in Florida. And it was immediately framed as a political thing. So that obviously got a lot of people's radars up, and what's up with this? As that has become real and has taken shape, there's growing evidence that maybe that initial framing was kind of inappropriate. Maybe it got people to send some alarm signals that maybe didn't necessarily need to be said. Not saying we don't need to keep an eye on it, but in terms of what's actually happening, going back to the USG Faculty Council, the chair of the USG Faculty Council is a professor down at Southern, and he has been invited along with all of the other chairs of the systems that are involved in this new accreditor to be involved in getting this thing organized off the ground. And he's given us reports on that front. And it has been clear to me from what he said that this is a good faith effort to bring competition to the accreditation space. It does not seem like an ideological thing. So we got an updated report on that yesterday from Ashwani, who is back in his role as the executive vice chancellor. He represents our system officially on the board of this new accreditor. So he's been very involved. And in his view, this is basically a quote from him that says, "It seems to be a good faith effort to create a good alternative accrediting product." There's no impression at all that it's ideologically driven. And the goal is to make it a quote constructive alternative to SACS. The other thing that we've learned is SACS has made some really substantive changes in the last couple of months. And the argument is that that's a reaction to the competition that's coming on in the space. So a lot of us want to know is this thing going to be shoved down our throats, regardless of what the end product looks like? Is this just a foregone conclusion that we're going to get shifted over to this new thing and leave SACS? The chancellor unequivocally said the answer to that question is no. No institution, as long as he's our chancellor, is going to be forced to switch accreditors. He said that it will be a choice that institutions will make based on the product. So the CPHE is a work in progress. It is by no means done. So he made it very clear that when that is finished, institutions will have the opportunity to look at that finished product, compare it to SACS and whatever SACS looks like at that time, because SACS is changing in response to the competition, and institutions can decide what they want to do. So you've heard that there's an initial trial run of 10 institutions that are going to be going through this new accreditor. That was actually just officially announced in the news release yesterday. The two from Georgia are Columbus and Southern. And they were not compelled to do that. They chose. I'm not sure if like their faculties chose or their institutions chose. That's a whole other ball of wax. But they were not compelled to do that. They have some unique circumstances that made it attractive to them. So overall, I think that's good news. I'm just going to run through some stuff. If you all have questions, I'm going to make time for that. But couple things. Post tenure review is always in the conversation. So if you're paying attention to the board meetings, you'll note that Ashwani gave a presentation about post tenure review recently to the board, and it was basically in response to, seems like everybody's passing post tenure reviews. Do we need to change something? This is some of the concerns that the BOR has about it. And to give you hard numbers, last year, so the year before this round, only 3% of PTRs were unsuccessful. The most current round of PTR, only 1.2% were unsuccessful. So from the perspective of the board who mandated this, they're asking questions like, should we expect that number to be higher? In other words, we did expect that number to be higher. Do we need to make it stricter? And Ashwani gave a presentation that the crux of his message was, no, you really should be expecting low numbers here, because by the time somebody gets to the point in their career where they're going to be undergoing post tenure review, they have already been through an extremely rigorous gatekeeping process at multiple levels they're basically by definition a high performer. You would expect for them to continue to do well. You're not just going to get to that point and, you know, check out. So from what Ashwani said yesterday, did that get rid of all of the questions that the board had? No. But the arguments being put out there that we don't really need to go farther. Another big topic of conversation was on the technology front, specifically AI. We know this is kind of blowing up our professional world. It's blowing up everybody's professional worlds, and the consensus around the state is there's a couple different philosophical schools of thought about how we should deal with this. There's a couple different maybe tangible solution schools of thoughts of how we should deal with this, but the bottom line is it's up in the air. On that front, in terms of concrete news that you can use, the board is going to, my understanding of how it was conveyed, is going to be funding and paying for it, rolling out statewide, a tool called Turnitin Clarity. So we all know right now that Turnitin's AI feature is not something you can trust. My understanding, and I've talked to several of you about this, AI is just not my thing. I don't really know much about it. My understanding of Turnitin Clarity is that it's the point behind the technology is to try and fix that. Whether it will, whether it won't, I don't know. But the state's going to invest in it and roll it out to us. Supposedly that's going to be coming out sometime in the spring for us to start playing with. About to get to the good stuff, but before I do, policy, Trump's compact. So the chancellor was asked, are you going to sign on to Trump's compact that he's putting out there? And the chancellor's response was, no. Is that clear enough? So it was a very unequivocal, the USG will not be signing on to that compact anytime soon. All right, merit and salary. We talked a lot with the chancellor and his staff about merit and salary issues. I have to go back to the idea that our voices matter. We vented a lot about how the recent merit pay rolled out. Faculty governance systems around the state vented a lot about the problems with how the merit system rolled out because it was screwed up at most institutions just in different ways. That filtered up. It filtered up via our provost and our presidents to the folks who can do something about it. They heard that your voices were carried to where they matter because you used them. So on that front, the chancellor basically said that the merit pay was his idea. He had heard from us last year that we got the point across that salary is a huge problem. He has limited tools of how he can directly, in the short term, solve that problem. He had room in his budget to do what he did, to give a certain amount of percentage to allocate as merit pay. He said politically, as the USG, he can't get a COLA, what we would understand as an across-the-board COLA, across the finish line unless the state legislature is on board. So politically, that's just not something he can do. So anything that he can do, it has to be framed as merit. So he pushed out the merit pay to the institutions last spring. And in the words of the system HR head, it was a learning experience. They recognize that it did not go well. So where are we going to go from here? Interesting. One of my counterparts at Georgia College said their president actually recognized that putting out that money could do actually more harm than good. They tried to send it back to the state. Just like, we don't even want it. It's going to cause too many problems. So they didn't take it back. So here's kind of the good news and the bad news on that front. The chancellor made enough comments to indicate that I think we should expect more merit pay being passed down to the institutions, probably similar non-life-changing amounts, because it's something he can do. He also is going to try and change the system, change how it's done. So whether they had a couple clear points on that front. The chancellor is really concerned about the inconsistency with how annual review ratings are given within institutions across the system. So probably this is going to end up being on the con side because we know how things tend to get trickled down and implemented. They said there's going to be more rigorous training about how these things should be, supervisors should be assigning these things. Who knows how that's going to get played out. In terms of actual guidance that the USC is probably going to be passing down with future merit, Ashwani said they have to try and strike a balance between giving enough guidance and having enough strings that it's actually helpful for the institutions, but at the same time, they can't give too much because we're dealing with everything from Gordon State to UGA and everything in between. They really need to allow institutions to do their own thing too. So that's that. I think the better long-term news. We consistently made clear that inconsistent merit, some years you get it, some years you don't. If you do get it, you can only use the current year. You can't use all that type of stuff is just entirely unhelpful. If we have to do the merit thing, it needs to be predictable. It needs to come every year. We need to have an established process for dealing with it every year. The chancellor said he completely understands, he gets it, and he said, quote, look for an announcement soon. That means, I don't know, but look for an announcement soon. They also understand, because we've, like I said, voices matter. Right? And I'm not just talking about we being the faculty council. We have made clear that the hole is so deep, a 2% merit raise is not going to get us out of the hole in terms of salary. So, and this consistency builds on some things that the SFAC, the Strategic and the new budget committee, was recently told that the system is doing a system-wide salary study that includes faculty and staff. So there was a question like, is it just faculty or is it staff? It is faculty and staff. With the goal, so this is going to be playing out over the new year. Their end goal is to develop a system-wide salary structure that is going to factor in everything from discipline and markets within the discipline. That's the why behind the salary study. And it is also meant to factor in sector and location around the state, right? So it isn't that we want one pay scale that applies to people at UGA and people at Gordon State and everything in between. They want a pay scale that can scale across the state. So step one, salary study. Step two, establish a pay scale that works across the system. And step three, get money to implement it. The third step being the most challenging step, of course. But they made clear that they're not going to be going down this road if they don't intend to follow it through. So no changes tomorrow, but it is, at least to me, to the extent that you buy what I'm selling, it was abundantly clear that at the highest levels in the system, they understand that the salary issue is a really, really big problem that is directly getting in the way of mission accomplishment, and they want to fix it. I'm done. Questions? What can I fill in? What's up? Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So top.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were told that you really don't have to reinvent the wheel here. That institutions know how to handle this. The big thing is make it predictable, make it regular, and institutions can do it. I think because there is a lot of turnover at the top level. I think there is still work to do on educating them that we can handle this. Institutions do have policies for this. There is going to be an ongoing conversation to try and make clear that we can do this. So we're trying to make that case. Yeah. Sorry for the info dump. I know it was a lot. I mean, I think that the stuff y'all wanted to know. So please share that info around campus. Anybody have any other questions or comments? If at any time you have something that is Hey, man, I really wish I knew what they did at Southern when it comes to this policy or that policy. That's what this network is for. So y'all just shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll get in touch with those folks, and they're very responsive. We get back to one another. Please take advantage of that. All right, we'll move on. Do any committee chairs have any info that they want to share about what their committees have been up to? Any general announcements, points, stuff like that? Okay. All right, couple action items, couple committees with action items. So undergraduate programs.
Steve met last week, everything that was incorrectly logged passed. Any questions or comments about the items attached to the agenda? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Any, yes, was everybody approved? Are there any no's? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Graduate programs.
GPC has 4 action items that were included in the agenda. Are there any questions about those? Any? So, for these 4 proposals from GPC, all in favor? And any opposed? Or any abstaining? Thanks.
Okay, having no old business, we will move on to the graduation rate. First, I'll just give you all the premise here. If you attended the President's State of the University address, he clearly laid out 5 long-term priorities that he wants to move big rocks on. They're big rocks in his view. We're going to move them. I think we have a role to be productive partners in that effort to give advice. Our job description as a Senate is to give advice to the president. So I want to take on maybe not every one of those things, but certainly take on the ones that are most applicable to faculty. And of course, graduation rates is certainly something that is in our wheelhouse. So he defines student success as graduation and retention rates, especially graduation rates. He set a goal of increasing our 6-year graduation rate by 10 points in 5 years. How are we gonna do that? We've talked about that in here before. I want to take another look at it, and I think I want to contextualize one of our colleagues. Sal, you're welcome to come up if you want to. Pull some data on this front that I think is really informative and will give us a really specific way to talk about this problem. Let's hear what Sal has to say, and then we'll go from there. That's all you're saying.
Good, thanks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sal Peralta, professor in the political science department. We were having this conversation after the president's address about, is that a reasonable number? Is that an achievable number? Is that pie in the sky? What is it? And we also, in our committee, the strategic and fiscal budget committee, we had a discussion about that, and I blurted out that I remember that the 4-year graduation rate stood at something like 10-11% for some time in the past. And so it stuck in my mind. So I went home, and between, loads of laundry and football games, I decided to pull the data, and I looked around the IEA website, and they have it all there. And especially the data that you're looking at here comes from what's called the common data set, which is a survey that every year the university has to develop in order to report this essentially to the federal government. These numbers are as hard as they come, as because they have to actually report it. Obviously, this makes absolutely no sense to you because this is just gobbledygook, which was the exact same idea that I had. So I thought, okay, well, then let me see if I can make more sense of it. This kind of makes a little bit more sense, but not really, because like, what the heck does that mean? So what I did was I started, okay, well, let's look at it this way. what you're looking at there is at the 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rates cumulative, meaning, right, that the 4-year, right, the bottom line is, after 4 years, a cohort comes in, 4 years later, we find out, okay, of the first time, full-time students that came in 4 years ago, how many of them graduated in 4 years, right? That's the 4-year graduation. Then the next line above it is the 5-year graduation rate. That is the one that cumulatively take those already graduated in 4 years and then add those who graduated in 1 year after. That's the 5-year graduation. And then the 6-year graduation and cumulatively adds 4 and 5, and then you get 6. Reality, that doesn't give you any. It's kind of useless as far as I'm concerned, simply because it's you don't get a lot of information. At least I don't get a lot of information. That's what I initially thought. I'll come back to it if you'd like to talk some more about it. So what I decided to do was I decided to disaggregate it. I disaggregated it because I was curious about exactly how the 4-year and 5-year rates basically came together. And so what you're looking at here is the bottom is the 6-year. So if you do not cumulatively add them, right, you have the middle line, middle trend is the 4-year graduation rate. The one above it is the 5-year graduation rate. The one at the very bottom is the 6-year graduation, which kind of makes sense because you should expect to have far fewer students graduating 6 years later. That's why that bottom line is so low, right? Over time, if you notice, right, the number of 4 and 5, flipped. Something happened around 2014 with the 4 and 5-year graduation rate completely flipped. And there is where I think there's an opportunity for us to begin to seriously think about what we did 4 years before to get to that. That to me is insightful. That to me is useful. That I can work with. What that tells me is that I need to spend more time doing more research. So I wanted to put it here for you to look at, because if you look at those numbers, right, it took us, just you think about what's happening over time. Let's just concentrate on the 4-year graduation rate, because to me, that's the one that is truly important. Because if we really hit that one, the other two will take care of themselves, essentially. And there's another wrinkle in there too. But notice that in 2003, we were hovering around 10, 11. And it took us until 2012 to increase 10%. From 10%, actually 5% to 15%. It took us 9 years to go up 5%. Again, President says, well, we're going to do this in 5 years. We're going to go 10%. Maybe, because if we actually look, then from that point, from 2012, right, we kind of linger a little bit, but then suddenly in 2017, right, we jumped full 5 percentage points in 1 year from 2017 to 2018. How do we do that? And then if we take it again, right, from 2018, we doubled again by 2022. How do we do that? I think that will all of you come in. I think if all of you come in there, because all of you know your programs, all of you have been here. I think long enough to have institutional mandates of what would be done in departments, programs, colleges, etc. They try to figure out what the hell did we do? I don't know. You guys do. So help me figure that out. There may be many more questions in here that I'm not capturing, that I'm not really articulating, and that's also where you come in. You need to bring those questions to the fore. Yes.
I have a question. So the 5-year, does that include students who were dual enrolled for a year and then came here?
Fantastic question. I love it. I need you to type it up and send me an email about it. In fact, that's exactly, if you have a question That's exactly what I want to do.
So I have. I was a student here from 2003 to 2006, and then I came here as a professor in 2015. And while I was a student, we had a lot of professors come and go, French, Spanish, a lot of new hires. But in 2015, when I was hired, from 2015 until now, the ILC department has actually been very, very stable. And we've had no new professors, all of us are tenured, et cetera, et cetera. I think this chart clearly shows that the stability of the faculty is very important.
Well, that could be one factor.
One, of course.
It could be something that maybe might have played a role in your department, maybe plays a role in other departments. I don't know. We need to contextualize this data. We need to find out the nuances and also the intangibles that Dylan and I were talking about. Remember what was going on? How many of you were here in 2014, more or less? Okay, so what was more or less going on in 2014? What happened between about 2012 and 2014? Got a new president, and what happened almost immediately, almost before that new president came in? A big raise. Don't you guys remember? Salary study, so many people got a big bump. Those of you who were not here, you missed it, sorry. But it was. I know I got a big bump. I think it was like $500, but it was a big bump. But that mattered. Marrero came in with a lot of energy. They said, hey, you guys got to let us know how we are going to do X, Y, and Z. Put a lot of trust in faculty to come up with ideas, a new plan, etc. And then I felt then, and I talked to the colleagues, that there was a lot of positive energy, right? Yes, the Great Recession was in 2008. Something was going on in those years. Maybe more people come back. Again, we need to sort of understand institutionally what was happening in our departments, colleges, etc. So if you can go back and start thinking about that, that would be very helpful.
It was at Complete College, Georgia. I don't remember the exact year when it started. May have been 2010, 11, or 12, somewhere in that neighborhood, where the idea was to identify courses in the fall and students were not doing very well and improve their success in those courses, especially, I think, mathematics and English.
Again, that is exactly the kind of institutional memory that we need to bring to bear on this data, simply because we can then begin to say, okay, well, what were the institutional factors that we actually engaged? I mean, institutional, what do you call them? Initiatives that we engaged in that could have helped us to really flip that blue line, right? That was one. Are there other, intangibles about faculty, the quality of the stability of faculty? So there could be some. Are the factors about the students themselves who are coming in at that point? We're getting better students, wealthier students, because if they can finish in 4 years, that means maybe they have something. I don't know. Of course.
I had a question just because I don't know much about how it rolled out, but I know that sometime in there, we made a long-term decision towards centralized advising. Which from our students' perspective, as far as like planning their courses and whether or not they're going to stick it out or things like that, I can't imagine it doesn't have a strong impact. So roughly when was the beginnings of pilot studies for central advising that started to affect a large number of students? Because I think the distance between that and centralized advising for the whole university was actually pretty wide. Am I remembering that correctly? It was like 3 years or more and more.
I don't, again, I don't remember, but I think, collectively, we might be able to come up with a solution.
Like you sort of unfortunately, because my last year as a non-tenure professor, tenure track professor, they had all the faculty were doing advising. In my first year, this assistant professor was 15, and I didn't have any advising to shift it to centralized right now.
Yeah, I was advising 15. But I also know that I got it planned and I jumped into the whole different with the advising each of the hard back. I think there was an whole audience of leaders that had the target to be abused and the stuff for those people that are right on the sort of
So there's one case here that I think, we really need to be mindful, right? So if you actually, let me go back a little bit to the actual data itself. So when you look at the, You can see it here also. So this is the starting point, right? So that's 100% of speed. Those numbers you see there, that's where we begin. Problem is that we lose, I think on average, and I don't have the exact number, but I'm gonna chase it. We lose about 30% of students. So because our retention rate is approximately 70% by the second or third year, which means that by the third and fourth year, we're not playing with 100% of the students that came in. We only have 70%. So what does that mean mathematically? It means that we don't have a full cohort left. And we can only have, even if we did everything perfectly and the numbers jumped all the way up, what's the maximum that we can have? Approximately 70%. And if we are at 40 right now, cumulative 6 years, that means we're more like at a 70% of this maximum that we can actually hit. So we don't have a lot of room to grow. And we need to be mindful of, because if we think that we're going to be able to jump so much so quickly with a shorter pool, that's going to constrain our capacity to go up. Just keep that in mind. I know that it took me a second for me to like wrap my mind around that, simply because I didn't pay attention to that. So anyway, you want to jump in, Dylan?
Yeah, so let's do this. Let's just take 10, 15 minutes and get the conversation going amongst ourselves. And here's what I want to do after that, like what the goal is. The goal is to, after that, report out and get a handful of really concrete things into the minutes that we can pass on. For example, we had a stable faculty stability, where they could really play it into this. We already brought up the idea that morale is increasing because of pay raises around this time. Another one of my impressions, fundamentally, to be clear, I think what we're looking at here is, this is where we see the spike around 17 to 18. So that's reflecting things that were coming in down around here. This period, and this is when I came on board during this period, and this was the best work to learn, work, and succeed era. Like, this was a place where people wanted to be contributing. Those intangibles like that. So I want to get things like that you remember from our institutional memory, talk about it amongst yourselves, and then let's get some concrete things like that into the minutes and into the record. Sound good?
And if you have any questions, yeah, I wasn't the decision. Absolutely send them to me, because then I can go back to the data. When the football coming on Saturdays, I will have time, go over it, go blue. Anyway, so yeah.
Talk about yourself. I don't think I need to do the group thing. Talking about yourself.
We have I know, yeah. But could be
Got it. That was 75. We did a first and we made beautiful masks. But then we go.
I mean, there's some others. But. I think there's like endorsement. So maybe there's alternatives.
No, I can. Right, no, but yeah. Yeah, that was my.
All right, folks, go ahead and reorganize here. So I'll go ahead and get us started and talk through kind of a couple things that my group brought up that are worth thinking through. So two big things we talked about where it seems like our students have changed in this time period. So kind of going from, the teens to where we are now. So was there an admissions thing or something? But we all know our students have changed. That's a factor. But I think
I think we had two other things. One was,
Yeah,
we need more data.
yes,
right?
we do need more data. Oh, the orientation.
And organizations.
Yeah, the orientation. So we started doing these small group orientations. And, I'm sure that has advantages, but in this time period, we're doing that big, massive welcome, big orientation party. And some of the feedback we've been getting from our students, we just talked about the exec last week was, but Kelly's committee was here from students that early in the semester, there's a ton of student events, like if meetings kind of all falls off. And part of that message is the student affairs, don't let the events fall off. But the other part of that is they really like those big events because that's where they socialize, that's where they meet people. So that's what we were thinking. What were y'all thinking? Okay.
So there was two things that we didn't talk about as a whole group that we kind of discussed. One of them is it's interesting that in 2020, you don't see a major shift in graduation rate because of the pandemic, which makes us wonder if the boom or the creation of more online programs across the colleges is one of the reasons why we see an increase, because if you're online, you're impervious to not having to be on campus due to COVID. So that's one. Another one that I brought up, thinking about is when we started really focusing on DFW rates, and Sal mentioned the key performance indicator. They seem to be like in 2015. I know we could track them, but when you would actually start having conversations with faculty about their DFW rates, it seems to start somewhere in that ballpark.
And we also talked about the online, the effect. In fact, when I was hired in 2015, you could, I guess you could get like a stipend or something for shifting your class to online or for getting training in online teaching. And there was a real push for it, I think, both from the state level and also programmatically in various places. I think a lot of that started obviously before I was hired, or else those programs wouldn't have already been there. So, I mean, in general, students becoming more knowledgeable about how to use online classes to complete degrees would have started somewhere around there. And then another, benefit happening under times of duress during the pandemic. So we talked a bit about that as well. I also had a question about if there was a change in how we either encouraged or promoted promotions for LTIs as well, because I seem to remember not only, and then we talked about hiring rates too. It'd be really nice to know when were our periods of bursts and new hires. Just anecdotally in the room, we just all talked about a lot of us have been hired in 2014, 15, 16. If that bears out in the data that we have a hiring push at that time, and we not only have a lot of fresh blood in the system, but we have relatively smaller class sizes, as long as the student count, the head count didn't go up a bunch too, then there's a lot going on there to take a look at as far as the faculty mix. If we were having less turnover from LTIs and a relative increase in the hire rate, then that could have provided some circumstances for students who otherwise would have not to go ahead and graduate.
Yeah, it's not just stability, but that energy. I'm 15 years as well, and you're right. It seems like there was a lot of folks coming on. And we have that it goes back to the energy and morale thing. A lot of people.
Many of us also had slightly lower caps for classes.
Yes.
Classes were smaller.
That's a good point. Make sure that's in the classes were smaller, the caps have gone up quite a bit, and a lot of that happened a lot later in the chart. That's a good point. What else do I have?
I'm relying on a lot of institutional history, knowledge of history here with my group. I came in at 2017, roughly, or 2018. Did I start March? 17, okay, all right. But also too, thinking about like, this connects to Dylan, things you were saying, everyone else was saying, Momentum Council, there's been a lot of effort for that retention of first year students, but what are we doing for second year students? What are we doing onward? So I mean, David Newton could really speak to those initiatives very well, and any of the other, I think even some QEP ambassadors, but does that help us in terms of, we were talking about that 30% loss of students, and so, you know, it's the idea that recruitment and enrollment is great. You get a lot of students in, but if you're not holding the majority of them, then your graduation rates don't get bigger and bigger and bigger. So how do we address the losses of the students is, are we meeting, just for example, those social activities need to happen more often to create community? What are we doing in terms of second year, third year retention? And we also hit on the non-payment and how students get severed from non-payment. And sometimes that's no fault of theirs. Like we know that the FAFSA is a nightmare right now. Disbursement of funds have impacted students in terms of getting severed for non-payment. In a humanistic way, are we doing the best we can with those students so that they know the institution, this is like keeping their morale, that we care for them, and this is a place where they see that you will help shepherd me to graduation. I will not hold my hand, but give me that assistance, that feedback, that honesty. So at that time, did we have that at a heightened level? Did we lose it during COVID? Do we need to regain it? Or is it not applicable to our new generation of students at all? You know, and we even talked about our own morale. How easily are our students picking up on that, even if we put on a smile and we can fake it really well when we go into the classroom, but how does the climate and morale across campus also impact their desire to stay or to transfer because they feel it'll be better somewhere else? Not because of academics, but because of they'll treat you more like a student than a human.
Yeah.
Or the faculty are excited.
Well, and just to, that, I mean, the more, I have the institutional memory, old, but to say that we're doing more administratively as faculty members than ever, which takes us away from our classwork, it is something, and the fact that attestance, there were a lot more initiatives that were happening. Complete College, right, Georgia, LEAP, Michael Crafton, when he was provost, really championed LEAP, which I can't remember what it was.
It's, I did this workshop.
Yeah, but it was all about, it was about retention. It was about keeping students, right? And those things just fell away, and now it's whatever needs to be done gets mandated to us rather than necessarily discussed with us, right?
Yeah. So I mentioned a framework, so yeah, this seems like it could be a very steep hill to go up based on the limited data right now. So I totally agree, more data, but even as we get data or anecdotal information, plus we're getting new mandates, how can we even imagine or understand how these new mandates could be a barrier or create failure in our efforts? If we're expected to act more as R1 faculty, does that then impact our student contact hours and how we can really facilitate student success?
What we have to do is details that we think are gonna get from it.
So I'll go back and.
I was just curious, again, looking at this, if we know what percentage of our students have to work significant number of hours in order to go to school. And if that would also help explain the trend for taking 5 years instead of 4 years, if they're taking the minimum number of courses they need to be full-time so that they can also be working, they may not be able to finish in 4 years. And so that rate, again, like the traditional 4 year might be declining because students are having to take longer to complete their coursework if they're working full-time jobs, or substantial part-time jobs. And then almost every student I have also works a job. And so they're trying to work around classes and work schedule. And so we offer these online options, which they love. It's flexible. If you're working a job, you can do that. But then also, it might just take them a little bit longer if they're having to work at the same time. So I'm curious if we look at the numbers prior to like 2017-ish, if there were fewer students working the amount that they're working right now. I don't know. It's just something that you might.
That can't be held back because he's actually done a lot of study already on how much our students are working. But I don't think, I think you have numbers from more recent times, but I don't think we have any numbers going back.
We used to capture, something, at the very beginning, students, when they come in, the very first time they come in here, once they register for classes, they can orientation, they used to fill out, survey. They would, in that survey, they would answer a series of questions about their, expected number of hours, working part-time, full-time, et cetera. But we stopped doing that. That's why I actually started doing it on my own, because I knew that data would not be right. And so, yeah, there will definitely be gaps, but I think part of what we need to do is again advocate for enhanced data that will give us the insights to precisely the things that might allow us to then improve that trend. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at that middle line, the blue line, the way that I think about it, perhaps the way a lot of students think about it is, think about it in terms of money, time being more valuable than money. That means that a student is graduating 4 years, they have a lot more time to go out and get jobs, do all kinds of different things. It took me 10 years to graduate from. I know what that means. So 6 years, that's it, nothing. 10 years, try 10 years. And so if we can really work on that 40 years graduation rate, the other two are going to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I know, so, I'm sorry, I just want to say, but, I know we may not have consistent data like this for over time, but we all know our students are working. We know our students are working more than they were earlier in the time period. We know that. Kelly, I'll get you in.
Jenna rightly reminded me that, Cornerstone, the first year seminar class started in 2017. And that first year seminar has, I cannot pull the exact number for you at the top of my brain, but it has something like a 14% additional retention rate for students who take first year seminar classes. So that could be contributing. I know that we don't have any space in the core for anything else, but there are many colleges and universities that run a second year seminar as well to kind of keep those students, and sometimes we do with the same teacher to kind of keep those students in rotation with somebody. The first year seminar definitely contributes significantly, and I think that's certainly not the only area, but it's definitely helping us push.
Yeah, so we had discussions in our group about the idea of how to college tech classes, and I've actually, with President Johnson, had discussions about, do we need to look at how we do those first year seminars? Do we need to do more of the how to college type of thing, or at the beginning, whether it's in orientation or somewhere else? But I think as a Senate, certainly in the committees, maybe the teaching committee, we should have that conversation about if we want to, whether it is replace first year seminar, whether it's add to it with a second year seminar, whether it's do something with orientation, especially if we get back to group orientation for the small ones. But a lot of institutions do try to solve problems like this with more of a how to college class. And I know many of you all know, just like I do with our students, that increasingly, it seems, we know we've always been a first generation destination for students, but it just seems like that challenge is becoming even more acute, students just not knowing how to do the basics, so. That's
Maybe one thing you could take to faculty council, which I know would be a lot of fun to take, is what has happened, what we talked about, we've never done before, and that is look at the core and make the core a little bit less than what it is, so that there is room for these seminar courses that tell kids how to college and then how to continue.
Another thing to consider that's come up, that as a faculty, we ought to have on our minds is, do we need to be doing more in terms of non-credit bearing remedial classes? Traditionally, that is not something we do much or any of, yeah, so, okay, so in the past we have. I don't know whether or not that coincides with our transition into the comprehensive sector or not, or if it's that old, I'm not sure, but down sector, that is a lot more of a standard practice. With admissions being liberalized quite a bit, maybe a lot of case point that as well. Kelly?
So one of the things we talked about aligns with some other points about needing more data for those that it took 5 years or it took 6 years, you know, like what data did we get to drill down on why that might have happened? You know, so what percent of those students maybe changed their major? What percent maybe had to go from full-time to part-time because they were working? You know, to get a good idea. I've got a child that it took her 8 years because it took 3 major changes and actually transferring to a different university before she finished. You know, so there could be a lot of things that we just don't know why it was that long. The other thing we talked about is we have knowledge of 3 students. And when I say we, nursing faculty, we have knowledge of 3 students who are in the same department. Their degree requires an internship, and yet they get absolutely 0 placement help for something that's required. And one of those students should graduate in this December, and as of this week, still has not been given any assistance for an internship. So that student is going to not graduate on time because that department is of no help. So, you know, are there things like that? If the major is going to require an internship, it should have a structure in place to put the student in those, you know, in those internships. The other thing that we didn't talk about in the group, but we talked about it in the executive committee, was apparently at one point in time, if the student was going to withdraw from a course, that withdrawal could not finalize until there was a response from the teaching faculty. So how many of our students get to midpoint, they think they're failing, and they choose to withdraw, and we don't know until we get the email that they've withdrawn, as opposed to if we got an email that this student has requested to withdraw, we can then reach out to that student and, you know, bring in that humanistic side to find out what's going on. You know, do they think they're failing? You know?
Yeah, I think that's good. I've heard administrators say that it's probably a little bit too easy to withdraw right now. So I know that's something we're looking at. So certainly hearing from us that we would really like them to make that a little bit more difficult, get in touch with the faculty,
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Well, and you know, what percent of these students maybe had a hardship withdrawal? And that didn't stop their clock, but it should have, you know, so it would be interesting to know some of those things.
I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I am curious how many students that don't come back have a passive GPA. Like how often is it that people just fail out and don't feel empowered to come back, or are we losing people that are actually passing our classes but just still lose interest?
Yeah, this is a good question I want to pass on, and Farouk said to me to pass on, but basically, and we have said this before, we need better data about
For the students who leave us, why are they leaving us? More about that circumstance. I think what we hear from the folks who would have the responsibility of getting that is, well, they're done. They don't respond to us anymore. I just would like to think that that's not going to be the end of the conversation. So I think hearing that again is important. You can pass that on. We need to understand that.
So I don't want to be a downer at all. But so we talked in the beginning, the first thing we said, somebody said was about the recession in 2008. So I was just looking around a little bit, try to find information about exactly what's going on for student perspective, from a student perspective. Since then, it really hasn't recovered for them. That the amount of money that they're getting from, that we're getting from the state per student for their tuitions or whatnot is like a lot less than never jumped back since then. So if each student is getting, you know, between whatever it is, like 12 to 16 or 17% less funding from a state, then we should see an effect to graduation rate start. And it shouldn't really start until a few years after that, because the people who have been here for 40 years just fine are the ones that are graduating in 2008. And then after that, you should have everybody start to get affected at an increasing rate. And then obviously, you know, we had everything that happened in COVID too, but there are some other systemic or like bigger issues too, because also the requirements for completion rates for students, financial assistance changed at around the same time period too. So suddenly they also had to finish faster or else they'd lose their funding. And that happened in 2011 or 2012. That's a good question.
Oh,
The 90s, yeah.
But it's been basically adjusted, right? It was 100% on the year. It started to graduate down.
It was 100% through what, 2005 or so? Was it 5 or 6? Okay. I know I made it through 100% in 2003. So it was like shortly after that they started changing it.
I would just also say, related to that, the US dollar is about 20% less value right now than it was in 2018. And rent in Carrollton is up 27% from 2018. So those are just, I mean, that's not a whole story, but those are data points that matter.
Add on to that point, some of the students who outwardly just seem not motivated are truly going through food insecurity, like really big life-related issues. So on campus, I know there are resources for them, but I think we have like let's destigmatize people that need resources and that to the students. And then as our group, just reiterating a couple of things, we discussed on a different side of things that faculty are just to the faculty are doing so much more administrative work than what they used to do, and that just pulls us out of the fun mindset, right? There's certain creative things I would do in the classroom in 2016 that today I'm just like, I don't know, that. And it's, you know, you can say it's burnout, but it's that doesn't just happen overnight. So we really need our support staff that none of us have. We really need chairs that have experience, all that.
I was recently at King University in New Jersey, and they seem to have gone through what we've gone through earlier. So they went to departmentless academics, where like we are, and then now they're back to departments and department chairs. So it's kind of interesting.
Talk about accounting of student success. If there is a student at West Georgia who leaves West Georgia and goes elsewhere and completes a degree, that's a success. Is there a way of tracking and counting such successes?
That's your question. Please,
Related to what you're talking about though with our students, all the issues that they have, something that came up in our department, we brought this up to the provost when he met with us back in August. And I haven't heard back, so I'm just gonna put this out there for you. What happened to our patient advocates?
right? We used to have staff members on this campus whose entire job was to look out for the well-being of our students. These weren't the counselors, right? These were different positions through health services. And they were that like mediator or go-between, you know, and help students process, like, maybe I need a hardship withdrawal, or maybe my professor can work with me and give me an incomplete, and I can still successfully finish this class. And they were both great. Like, who all knew Corey Hyman, right? And Jill, like, these were amazing people. And then they're gone, and I don't know that there's a replacement.
Yeah, there is. There is just, no, I'm involved in this.
Okay, well, it would be nice then if we
Getting
could,
emails.
if we knew who they are now, because I've gone to our website, I've tried to find it. I directly asked the provost. He didn't even know what I meant when I said patient advocate.
Do they have a different title?
Well, whatever it is, we need to know how to use them.
Well, to that end, I was talking to a student who said there are only 2 counts.
Scott Benefield.
Yeah.
What's the name?
Scott with 2 T's, Benefield.
Okay.
What's the title?
He is. He said, it's like he's he has a master's, he's a student advocate lead / student health center. And he is active. I can attest to that here and now.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Let's get.
But okay, well, Jason, we'll come back in just a second.
Yeah.
We have to meet, please.
I work with, and Georgia, and that there is going to be USD system-wide staff catch next year. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not heard. I can't say one way or something, just said I have not heard that.
Yeah, because they're talking about extra staff. That's
Sure. Jason?
Just a quick question. If we have any data, or we should collect data about graduation and retention rates per discipline in association to the total number of credits required for that degree. And if the total number of credits for the whole degree is highly inflated, is that a barrier to students graduating within a time limit or being retained?
No, that's good. Anthony,
So, just looking at the data, I'm a qualitative person, not quantitative. But I was thinking about this when we talked. I know a lot of things that have come up is like over the last 10 years, what we've lost, right? The issue that I have is like, while we've lost things, graduation is breaking up 10%. So what is the good things that have happened driving up when we have lost morale, et cetera, right? So like we could talk about what we've lost, but during that same interval, graduation went up 10%. So why? Like, I realize there's bad things, but there has to be some good things to drive it beyond just the typical grousing that we all do. So it's helping to change the negative. So I think that we can't lose sight of looking at the data and seeing that it's increasing.
Sure. Sorry.
I'm Jody Bryan, for nursing, and in case somebody alluded to it, wanted to get lost. The availability and access to our students, I think that's huge, and that needs to be brought into it. So many mental health issues, and anecdotally, students will refer them to the counseling center, and they'll say, I can't get in, it's really difficult, I've lost services, and my mental health.
And it's been that, I feel like it's been that way since the pandemic, and it just never, that all has been never recovered.
Yeah, thank you, that's you.
Faculty are leaving, as students might want to quickly finish a degree while they still have access to those families.
What kind of accessibility, thank you.
We do need to realize that most of the negatives that we talked about happened way towards the end.
Yeah. And I think, Sal, correct me if I'm wrong, but it hasn't been strictly up. I think in recent, it's dipped down a little bit, right?
Yeah, so the thing about the data is that, because it's based on the, what do we call it, the common data set, when you get to the very end, we're looking, you gotta look back 6 years, and so there is a little bit more data beyond, 2023. But I didn't want to integrate it simply because I don't have the full data set that they provided. But yeah, it looks like it's dipping a little.
Yeah.
And that's,
So if these are, 4, 5, 6 year graduation rates, then it could be the case that we're just gonna start paying the piper pretty hard for some of the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's just saying that there's some period there, things were positive, like those, but those are, I mean, I think we some of them overemphasize the negative, you know, saying what worked to get it up. And, I mean, maybe there's lots of things that sort of driving it down, but there's something else.
Oh, you're right, we had all of those initiatives that we've been talking about and first year seminar and,
Yeah.
there was,
And this period, so this period where it's shooting up,
yeah.
this is reflecting the things that were put in place. So where it's going up that you're saying, like, that's actually reflecting stuff that was happening a lot earlier that we've lost, that we're talking about that we've lost. Yeah.
Oh, yes. You know, I'm challenged mathematically. So in the conversation in the room, we're picking, our concerns and also seeing our strengths. And we're seeing both of those in this data because if anything kept a student from graduating, who would have graduated in 4 years, that made the blue line go up.
Right.
And if anybody, if we did anything that saved someone who wouldn't have graduated by 6 years, and they graduated by year 5, then that made the blue line go up too. So we have we have a lot of causality conflation here, right? So like, one of the things that I think we're doing that's really smart is we're saying, whatever we're talking about, we need to account for a time lag.
Yeah.
The time lag has to be not just by graduation rate, so you just mentioned that one, but it also, we talked about this, whatever good ideas we come up with, we like to think that they immediately affect graduation rates, but they don't. So that's why I said I'm being a little bit of a downer if I'm pointing to something that we can't fix that happened in 2008 and then got, piggybacked on by COVID. So there's a lot going on here that's hard
There
to
is,
get around.
in terms of cyclicality, right? So cycles, if you notice what is happening in, I think I'm not really sure if you're able to see it very clearly, but the peaks, right? So just look at the highest peaks, right? 10.5, then count 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, if that was a little bit like 12 or something like that. Then count again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it keeps going up. Then, right, you get to the peak, either 4 or 5 years. Then count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, another peak, and so on and so on. So there is something cyclical going in, in the data. This is just back in the envelope between loads kind of thing. So yes, there's a lot more that we need to really pay attention to and understand, because that lag effect, it really, what we see, on 25.5 is the result of 4 to 6 years of actual hard work that people did. But what we don't want to lose sight of is, what was it that was being done correctly that we're eliminating, trying to chase new initiatives that may not have the effect that we think they will have. So if we understand what it is that we did right and how that actually helped to increase the rates, then we may assess at that point and say, what do we keep? What do we throw out? Right?
In the comprehensive sector, what is the average graduation rate?
That is a really good question. Jason, I think, just alluded to that question. Again, I don't know, looking at the other challenges, that who are our peers? That's the comprehensive sector. That's who do we really compare against? Because we think demographically, we think geographically, we think, I have to have a very, very close match, because otherwise we're going to be comparing apples and cows.
I think it's
not apple to oranges, because they're still fruit. You can't. Yeah.
Now, I didn't do like an exhaustive search or whatever, but I think during the president's state of the university thing, I would been crazy on my phone trying to find out, like, how off are we really? And my impression from a, thumbs frantic during the meeting, and I didn't more than that, unfortunately, but was that we're not that far off of what's normal for regional comprehensive, and that a comparison to something like a 60% graduation rate at that 6 year mark or whatnot would be apples to oranges.
Yeah.
And so I would like to have, like, definitely, I think we can get good information about what's normal for an institution like ours. And then talk about what's likely to have, because we still want to, it's not like we're gonna be like, oh, we're normal, so that's fine. We don't want that better graduation or anything.
That's it. Just sit down.
So on that front, and I think we'll start moving towards a conclusion here. The university actually right now is updating our list of peer institutions, and it's mostly the administrators and the USG who are working on that, but they invited me to participate in that to give faculty voice. And in the process of doing that, I've been going blind looking at data that addresses these questions, and a key variable is graduation rate. We tend to be on the low-ish end, but for any institution that you would credibly think would be a peer to us, like the mid 40s to low 50s is pretty typical. Like, we're just not that far off. Yeah.
That's what my assessment is.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything burning you want to bring up? If not, before you do that, if you do, I will say anything else that you have is just a great idea, but I didn't get to bring it up, or I didn't want to bring it up in public. Shoot us an email and we'll still get it incorporated into the record.
And I'll come back some other time. Hopefully the better data, but they said it's really, it's not really good.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. We'll be adjourned. See y'all next time. We're good. Call it a wrap. If y'all want to talk about anything on it.
Mention something. I use this read all the time. You need to use the screen. And see the screen better than that. Right there. I think it makes blind spots. But I learned that when I was it's all out of here.